just landed on this channel. This is where I do cycling videos, both inspirational and entertaining, and I do absolutely froth over a deep dive road bike review, notably a versus battle. So if that sounds up your alley and you enjoy this video today, please consider supporting the channel by subscribing below. So there has been a big build up to this review. I did a build video on the Chapter 2 RERE at O'Mara Cycles in Melbourne. It's been seen by over 120,000 people now. And I followed up that video with a first impressions on the Chapter 2 RERE seen by over 30,000 people. So I know there are some people out there that are like, okay, Cam Nicholls, what's your motivation behind promoting this brand? Now, if you want the full detail, I'll put that in the below video description area. But just know this, I get paid sweet FA to do all my road bike reviews on this channel. They're purely driven out of a passion for road cycling and a desire to help people make the right purchasing decision, because if they do that, they'll ride their bikes more. But as a result of publishing that build video and the first impressions video, there's been a lot of eyes on the Chapter 2 RERE, and I've had a ton of people reach out to me saying, Cam, what is the bike like to ride and when is your full review coming out? So here we go. This is the Chapter 2 RERE, an aerodynamic road bike that is a first generation aero road machine from Chapter 2, an emerging road brand out of New Zealand. And when I say road, that is all they do. One of the things I love about them, they just focus on road and they just do frames, really supporting a growing desire of people that are looking to build up their own bikes. Now I understand there's some skeptical people out there. I get it. You may not have heard of Chapter 2 before, or you may be like some others and you think you can buy the same frame from AliExpress for a couple of $100s. And I think it's natural to have caution when something new enters into a mature market. So I've got two things for you. We're going to go head to head with one of the most renowned road bikes in the entire world, the Specialized Venge. And number two, if you're still not satisfied with this video, I had an hour-long conversation with the founder of Chapter 2, Michael Pride, and their head of marketing, Chris Young. Podcast discussion linked to in the below video description area. We go for an hour. We talk about the brand. We talk about how they developed the RERE. I asked them a whole bunch of questions I've had from the YouTube audience. We touch on everything. So now we've got that out of the way, I'm going to focus this review on 5 core pieces, and as per normal, I'm going to focus predominantly on the frame because that's what makes bike brands unique. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about are numbers. Okay, what's the weight, what's the price, what's the tire clearance, etc. Number 2, we're going to talk about Airfoil versus Kammtail. Now, some of you may be thinking, what the hell are you talking about? Bear with me. Number 3, we're going to talk about geometry. And number 4, we're going to talk about riding experiences. Now, I need to talk about the other things before we get to riding experiences, so please bear with me. We're reviewing 2 seriously good bikes here. And 5th, in my conclusion, I'm going to tell you what bike I would prefer to take home and why. So number 1, let's talk numbers. Now quickly on tire clearance, you can get 28mm tires into this bike right here, and we're going to be talking about the disc versions. On the Specialized Venge, you can get up to 32mm tires. Not sure why you'd want that on an aero road bike, but you can. The price point of this frame right here, I'm going to talk in AUD and splash in a little bit of USD. We're $3,600 just over for this frame. The Specialized Venge S-Works is $5,600. So we're talking about a $2,000 AUD difference, or $1,500 USD. In terms of weight, now there's a lot of variables here, so I'm just going to put them up on the screen here. We've got the Chapter 2 and we've got the Specialized Venge, and then we've got the totals. And then the complete bikes. I rode and tested the 54cm Venge, which is a similar size to this. This is a medium. The top tube is a little bit longer. Weight of the Venge was 7.47 kilograms. Complete bike with pedals, mount, and cages, because that's the way we ride bikes and it's the way I like to weigh them. And the Chapter 2 RERE, now with the Zip 808s, which is what this bike originally came with, but I had to hand them back to SRAM because I only got them for the summer period. Now the boys at O'Mara Cycles did have a little bit of trouble with the strain on their trapeze, but Tommy finally got it right, and that weighed in at 8.12 kilograms. And the Chapter 2 RERE with these wheels right here, which I'm going to review later, they're the Zip Course 30s. That came in at 7.9 kilograms. Now, you may be wondering why there's such a discrepancy when, you know, the frame package sort of comes in a similar weight. You've got to think about, we've got different tires, we've got different group sets, etc. Now lastly, the carbon fibre that's utilised on this bike is Toray carbon, highly regarded carbon fibre out of Japan, and Specialized on the S-Works Venge use FACT, and they use a material they call 11R. So number 2 is Airfoil versus Kammtail. Now, I've had to re-script this because you can go down a massive rabbit hole, and if you want further detail, I'll put it in the below description area, but essentially Airfoil design, the tube shapes, this is more airfoil, okay? More of a traditional tube shape which has come from the aerospace industry. Now the Specialized S-Works Venge isn't Camtail, say like the Scott foil or the Trek Madone, but they used a blend of Camtail and airfoil and created their own tube shapes with a special terminology, of course being Specialized. And riding that bike and looking at it up close and personal, I would say it's more Camtail than it is airfoil, and this is going to help us sort of delineate both bikes here. So there's strong arguments on all the points that I'm going to reference here, but riding both bikes and researching this topic for quite a significant period, these 5 points I'm going to talk to you in my opinion. So number 1, the airfoil, this design here is faster in a straight line, notably in pleasant wind conditions. Some brands may argue with that, but fair chances those brands use the airfoil design for their time trial bikes. And I think that's the clincher right there. Number 2 is the Camtail creates a better platform to create a stiffer and more aggressive performing road bike. Number 3, on say erratic environmental conditions, so swirling winds, crosstail, crosshead, those type of things. There's a big debate on is the Camtail or is the airfoil better? So I'm just going to call this one even. Number 4 is handling and comfort. Now the actual frame geometry and the KPIs the brands put into bikes, I think has probably a bigger impact. So once again, it's hard to call this one, so I'm going to call this even. And the last one is aesthetics. Once again, some people prefer the Camtail look over the airfoil, but it's purely down to personal preference. Now, if you have a strong opinion on this topic, and I'm sure some of you will, I'd love to hear your thoughts below in the comment section, but please don't just call me a dickhead and do a smoke bomb. We're all about good conversations on this channel. Number 3 is geometry and design. Now, we've talked about, the different tube shapes of both bikes. Something that's really interesting on this bike is the sloping top tube, another can of worms I opened, and we're going to talk more about that in the riding experience, and also the dropped and kinked seat stays on the Chapter 2 RERE. But essentially, when comparing this medium versus a 54cm Specialized S-Works Venge, they're pretty much the same in terms of their size. The geometries are very like for like, a few millimeters here, a few millimeters there, with the exception of 2 that I'd like to call out right now. One is the wheelbase. So the Venge has a wheelbase of 978 millimeters versus a medium RERE at 970 millimeters. That almost 10 mil difference will make the bike slightly more responsive. That's the RERE, ducking and weaving through a bunch or pedaling around a technical bit of road, whereas the longer wheelbase on say the Specialized Venge will provide more stability. Let's just say you're in a criterium, you're on a bunch ride and you're getting bumped and knocked, you're gonna have a little bit more stability on the Venge than the Chapter 2 RERE. Now the second part is the stack, which I quite often talk about on this channel, from here to here, up to here, so it really enables the rider, very important for these aero machines, to either sit up a little bit higher, so take the pressure off the neck and the shoulders, or get more aerodynamic. Now you've actually got 16 mil more on the RERE versus the S-Works Venge, which is pretty significant. But if you consider the Manor handlebar system here, which I know it's a little bit grubby, I've got greasy hands up here in the Sunshine Coast from all the humidity, but it's quite dropped. So if you're in the hoods, you're probably going to get into the same position as you would be able to on the Specialized S-Works Venge. So number 4 is riding experience. Now with the Specialized S-Works Venge, I got pretty much what I expected and a little bit more when I rode that road bike. It was beautifully engineered, it was fast, it was aerodynamic, it was stiff, it was aggressive, super responsive out of the saddle, really what you would expect. And the aesthetics of that bike, I've never had so many people come up to me and compliment me. It wasn't my bike, they thought it was, saying what a magnificent road bike that was. And when you get up close and personal with a Specialized S-Works Venge, the way it's engineered, it really is a beautiful machine. Now the 2 things that sort of surprised me a little bit was comfort. Now it's not a comfortable road bike, but they have improved the comfort from the predecessor device and the original Venge, which I rode, which was super uncomfortable. You can now take it on a 100 or 120 kilometer ride without feeling, a fair amount of pressure in your neck and shoulders and your lower back. So they've done a reasonable job there. And the second one was just riding that bike with a bit of a tailwind at 30 to 33 kilometers. You'd really notice you'd get a bit of a push, like the bike was working on your behalf. So with the RERE, it's been quite an interesting experience. Most of you will know I built the RERE with criteriums in mind. So it's an aero road bike, obviously. We've got SRAM 1x, which is a 1x system, really good for criterium racing, and I had Zip 808 wheels on it. Now, while I think I've still got a lot to learn with riding the Zip 808s and utilizing them to my advantage in a race, because they're actually quite phenomenal for day-to-day riding, 30 to 33 kilometers an hour, particularly on a blustery Melbourne day, they just weren't practical. It wasn't until I put on these Zip wheels that the RERE started to talk to me in a different language. So for the past couple of months, I've really been getting to know some unique characteristics of the Chapter 2 RERE and also reflecting on some of the other characteristics that I built this bike for. So there are 4 things I'd like to walk you through right now. Number 1 is its speed. Is it faster than the Specialized S-Works Venge? Well, maybe in a straight line because of its design. In tough, erratic environmental conditions, maybe the Venge wins. It's really hard to test these things unless you put these things in a wind tunnel, or Specialized call it a wind tunnel. And they've both been tested in wind tunnels, and to me, they both feel like really fast bikes. Okay. Number 2 is stiffness. Now, this is a stiff bike, stiff enough for me, and you can certainly sprint out of a corner and you feel the bike respond the way a stiff road bike should. Is it as stiff as a Specialized S-Works Venge? No. If you're Peter Sagan coming out of a corner, despite the fact that Specialized pay him, he would probably prefer to be on a Venge over this bike. Now the third one is comfort. Now this one really caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting a comfortable road bike, and this is probably the most comfortable aerodynamic road bike I have ever ridden. And also, if you listen to the podcast below and hear Michael Pride talk about, okay, what were the key KPIs for this bike? Comfort was definitely in mind. Now we've got a dropped seat stay, which is kinkled here, and we've also got more head tube here, which sort of takes away some of that frontal vibration. So looking at the frame design and geometry and hearing what Mike Pride had to say, it's no wonder that this is a comfortable aero road bike. Number 4 is its downhill credentials. Was I expecting it to be incredible on the downhill? Didn't really think about it, but it is. I'm normally a wimp. Anything over 60, 70 kilometers, I start to freak out. I've been going 80 to 90 on this and feeling like I could go even faster. Now what I want to do here is show you this bike right here. Now what's that downhill mountain bike got to do with this? Well, let's hear what Mike Pride had to say.
I guess with my downhilling experience and the fact that I love to ride quickly downhill, I've always developed bikes that do handle well descending. And, last weekend when I was racing the Tour de Rangers, we were in a pretty quick bunch, and it was pretty quick to see that, once I got into my tuck position, I pretty much left everybody behind.
So as you can see, another KPI to make this bike a super downhill proposition. Now, when you think about the sloping down tube, this triangle creates, a light, stiff frame that tears down the mountains with incredible stability. It also gives the Chapter 2 RERE some agility with standover height for different rider height requirements. But what do the naysayers say about a sloping down tube? Well, they say it's actually a cost-cutting measure because you don't have to put in as much seat tube, and they also say it's not aesthetically pleasing to the traditional eye. But I kind of like it, and I kind of think that it has a lot to do with this bike's ability to be comfortable and also tear down the mountains. So in conclusion, which bike would I prefer to take home and why? Now, this is always a challenging one because everyone has unique riding requirements and it's never black and white. So I'm going to put a caveat. Let's just say you've got an all-round road bike or you've got an endurance road bike and you want to add another one to your collection, want something that's fast, aggressive, stiff, then I wouldn't be taking this one. I'd be taking the Specialized S-Works Venge because you've got the all-round road bike. Or if you're a criterium junkie and you love sprinting out of corners, you want something stiff and aggressive, go the Specialized S-Works Venge. Now, this bike is still stiff, still aggressive, and it's obviously very fast, but its key characteristic in my mind is its ability to be a bit more all-round. It's got comfort in mind. So if you're looking maybe for the first time to buy an aero road bike, or if you've owned an aero road bike before and you've been a little bit disappointed with, you know, the comfort levels, you've been a little bit stiff and sore after some of those longer rides, but you're attracted to the aero road bike, that's what you want, then this is the bike that you should be taking home. And my needs right now, where I'm going with my cycling, this would be best suited to my needs, and thus would be the bike that I would want to take home. But having said that, they're both incredible bikes, and if you had either of them, you'd be a very happy biker.